Hey, good afternoon. Greg White, Tequila Sunrise, Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton here all with you on Wednesday's live stream. Greg, I like that.
I wanted to see how much I could fit on the screen. Right.
Well, I'll tell you, you've been on quite a roll. Folks need to know a lot more about Tequila Sunrise. We've had a slew of conversations with some of the movers and shakers, not just across supply chain, but across industry. And that looks like it continues. You're like old DiMaggio here lately, 57 game hit streak, right?
I guess so. Yeah. People like listening. This next episode is going to be all about investing in supply chain tech. So I have a feeling like my, so you think you want to start a supply chain tech, this could be a little bit of an awakening for investors, like the same sort of awakening we offered founders. So
love it.
But hey, let's talk about that later, man. We have
a huge guest once again
here. Yeah.
Huge guest. Today's all about supply chain today and tomorrow with the one and only Mike Griswold with Gartner. We've enjoyed this monthly series. We've gotten a ton of feedback from folks in the audience. I know that live streams have been a ton of interaction and answers. So, hey, David and Kavan, Smile, great to have you. Larry Klein, 2 Squared via YouTube, of course. Jenny Froome may even sneak in here on YouTube. But hey, just a fair challenge. And this isn't really a challenge our audience because they always bring it.
I know.
But
how can you challenge them?
That's right. We're going to be talking about some key takeaways from a big event early this month with certainly a leader in the know. So y'all get ready because we want to hear from y'all as well. So Greg, quick programming note as we're working hard to improve and increase and enhance and maybe optimize everybody's supply chain IQ.
Yep.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, everybody, make sure you check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast from. So search for Supply Chain Now and please subscribe. It's free. And you won't miss conversations like this one with Mike Griswold here.
Money back guaranteed. Our marketing people want us to say subscribe or follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch.
Nice. Nicely done. And on that note, we should thank both Amanda and Clay and the whole team.
Right.
Always behind the sides. They're certainly the true cogs in the engine that keep us coming. So great to see what they do. Appreciate it. 2 quick announcements. We've been talking about these 2 events for quite some time. We've had an outpouring of participation on this webinar. We've got teed up tomorrow. It's all about not just IoT, but the latest and greatest cutting edge applications, practical, bottom line results driving applications of IoT. Yeah. So check that out. We've got a link to the registration page on the show notes, making it easy. 1 click, November 19th. Already tomorrow, Greg. Have you already gotten your turkey thawing out?
We buy it unfrozen, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I've been contemplating a deep fried one, but I don't think I'm going to get away with that this year.
Okay.
Hey, but one thought on this IoT thing.
Yep.
So hopefully this is a motivating perspective. Consider that with IoT, we no longer have to use traditional forecasting methods to identify when to position parts, replacement parts, and new equipment in the supply chain. So think about it from that perspective, and then listen up.
I thought for sure you were going to apply that to when you pull your turkey out of the freezer and begin the thawing process. Continue down that theme. It's turkey time, Greg. We got to embrace that theme at least for the next couple of days, right? Or a couple of weeks. Lots of turkey sandwiches. Cranberry sauce, no cranberry sauce, Greg.
No cranberry sauce.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm
very basic when it comes to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes, I am too. It looks like
mashed potatoes and dressing. That's about all I care about.
Larry Klein does steaks at his house. That's the tradition there. Clay Luton says, unfrozen turkey. Talk about nimble supply chain. Nice job, Clay.
Well, I may or may not have been doing business in the food and food service industry, so I might have a connection or two.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, one other quick announcement before we bring in the one and only Mike Griswold. We're really looking forward to the SAPICS, the 2020 SAPICS virtual conference. It's taking place next week. Our role there, Greg, is twofold. Number one, we're going to be sharing a couple of our favorite moments from 300 plus podcasts and live webinars here in 2020, as well as hashtag trivia is back. We're going to be leading one of the most competitive events this side of the supply chain industry. So hashtag trivia is back. Looking forward to that, Greg.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I love the dichotomy of we're the entertainment, but we're also the authorities. So I think I said this before. I'm going to wear my tuxedo T-shirt.
Yes,
I like
entertainment.
But I'm also a supply chain authority.
A turkey with a tie. I love it. All right. Well, hey, check out the event. We can't say enough great things about SAPICS. Love what they're doing to disseminate supply chain best practices and leadership and forward-looking leadership across the continent of Africa, across all the 40 plus countries that make up the continent. So check that out. The link to register is in the show notes. Okay. So Greg, I'm excited. I was on the sidelines watching you and Corinne in October. Kind of pick Mike's brain. It's great to be back with him. So with no further ado, let's welcome in Mike Griswold, Vice President Analyst with Gartner.
Hey guys.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, thanks. I would submit, going down Greg's turkey line, the very first Internet of Things was a little thing that pops up on the turkey to tell you it's done. So I think they were ahead of the curve when it comes to IoT. So,
and if you think about it, I mean, there are refrigerators that have IoT in them.
Oh yeah.
All you'd have to do is put something in the freezer that could identify how long it would take to thaw. Yep. I mean, there's a way to do it.
Yes. The only thing we're missing
with you guys.
Only thing we're missing here is a turkey's perspective on exactly what they think.
Yes.
But regardless, hey, great to have Mike Griswold back. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I want to say hello to a few folks. Kavan, Keith Duckworth, of course, Larry, Sophia Rivas Herrera is back with us. Clay, David says bonus episode, and he's going to grab his popcorn. So great to have you here. David. So buckle up. This is going to be a great session. All right. So let's have a little bit more fun.
Sure.
We're trying to keep, it's been so important to maintain a healthy sense of humor here in this 2020. So I appreciate your good sportsmanship here, Mike. So 3 quick lightning round questions for you. First question, how many hours of Masters coverage did you watch, and who were you pulling for?
Yeah, so I'm assuming too much isn't a wrong answer. I watched it all, and in fact, I watched live from the Masters before and after. So I watched it all. I had my brother-in-law runs for entertainment purposes, a Masters pool that had about $1,000 in it. I didn't see any of that. I had Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa, who I thought were, semi-intelligent picks going into this, the way they were playing. It obviously didn't turn out. I do, though, want to give, in some serious note, kind of a life lesson that I took from the Masters, which is, if anyone had watched it all, or even if you didn't watch it, I'm sure you heard about Tiger Woods, getting a 10 on a par 3. For those of you that don't golf, that's not good.
Yeah.
But what he said afterwards and what he did afterwards, I think, is a life lesson for everybody, which is in golf and in a lot of instances, you have to find a way to pull yourself up, right? He referenced in golf, there is no sub, there is no replacement. He had to figure out a way to gut through and finish the hole. And then he managed to, I think, birdie 5 of the last 6 holes. So, I mean, sports in general, I love because they give life lessons. Golf in particular can give us all life lessons. And I think that was one from Tiger.
Excellent.
I did not see that. Was that on 12?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, if it was going to be on any hole, it would be 12.
Yes. So you should go look it up. I'm sure there's YouTube of it. It's something that all of us that golf can relate to. But what we can't relate to, at least for my game, is, when I get to 7, it's like, okay, that's the most I can take in this hole. I'm out of here. When you're the Masters, you can't do that. You got to finish. And he ended up with a 10. So,
also continuing analogy, everything's within your control typically, right? You're the only one hitting the ball. There's no defense. No one can break your clubs except for you.
Yes.
So many life analogies there with the game of golf. Want to say a quick hello, Ann and Dia. Great to have you via LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining us. Pratik is back with us. Pratik, welcome. Hope this finds you well. And David is a big fan of cauliflower soup during Thanksgiving. So love that.
That's a new one.
It takes all kinds for sure. Different strokes, different folks. Love that, David.
He's already had his Thanksgiving, hasn't he?
Oh, that's right.
That was a couple weeks ago Monday. Yes. I'm aware that many of our emotional support Canadians are not aware of the timing of Thanksgiving, because I'm sure you've seen that meme, Mike. Because Sarah Barnes scheduled a board meeting for ships on Tuesday at late afternoon, and I'm like, man, usually I don't work after like noon on Monday.
Well, let's keep driving. I've got two more questions, Greg, before we get into the symposium that I want to pose to Mike. Next question, Mike. What is one habit or routine that you've picked up in 2020 and you're grateful that you did?
Yeah, this is somewhat, I think probably actually more on a serious note, and I think for people that work from home, it might be something to consider. But it was something as simple as closing my office door. Leaving my office door tended to allow me to wander in and out over the course of the entire day. It was like I was never really disconnecting and shutting down. I know for people like for me in the analyst world, I've been working from home forever. But for people that's relatively newer to, I think finding some way to, even if it's just virtually closing your door, that's been huge for me. And just being able to kind of separate the work stuff from the home stuff. So that to me was big. Just this idea of closing the door.
Smart.
Yeah, the simple things tend to be some of the more powerful things. So I love that answer, Mike. The last time I posed that in the last week or two, I also got some serious answers around a couple of executives that took up either gardening or some kind of gardening, and it was very therapeutic and very. They were able to really step back from the email and all the digital ways that our organizations get their hands around you. But love that answer. Last question here is, what is the last movie or TV show that you watched that you actually thought was worth the time?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. My wife and I were late to the Mandalorian party, but we watched the first season and absolutely loved it. If you're into that whole Star Wars kind of universe and the satellite things that happen within that universe, Mandalorian was really, really good. And they just started launching season 2. And then something maybe a little bit more closer to earth. My wife and I love Yellowstone, the Kevin Costner series. If you have not watched season 3, watch season 3. Be prepared for the season finale.
Yes,
it is brutal. I won't say anymore, but man, I can't wait for season 4 to start.
I'm with you. What a cliffhanger! It's
yes.
The cliffhanger of all cliffhangers in the 80s when I was growing up was Who Shot JR? Dallas, right?
This is close.
Yeah, this is close. And by the way, it reminds me just how much of a fan I am of Kevin Costner. I don't think I've ever seen a bad movie or TV.
Well,
he's
Waterworld wasn't great.
Both of you went the same place.
I think if he sticks to westerns and baseball, he's perfect. When he strays, I mean, The Postman wasn't horrible. It was better than Waterworld, but yeah, I
was really great in The Big Chill.
Yeah.
And let us not forget Bull Durham.
Yes.
So
my favorite movie of all time.
Yes. And Greg has got every single quote memorized, and they come in from time to time. But hey,
let me be a constitutional amendment outlawing the designated hitter.
Let me be transparent before we recognize a few comments, and I'll toss over to Greg. We got one of our dogs a homemade thunder jacket, right? He's always anxious and whatnot. So my youngest outgrew a jacket, and it happened to fit the dog. So now everywhere he's moving, you hear this vinyl
Swish.
scraping. Yeah, and y'all may not have heard him. He just walked into the home studio here, and so I was texting as you were talking about, Mike, the value of shutting your door.
Yeah.
I was fast and furiously texting my wife to shut the door. So hey, there's so much power in that. All right. So let's recognize just a few folks here. I think I mentioned Anadia already, tuned in via LinkedIn. Mark Held is tuned in via the logistics executive team. And just, Mark, great interview with Patrick Van Hole, who's a great friend of the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think that dropped yesterday. Yeah, great interview. So, Mark, cheers to you, Kim, and the whole team there. All right. So, Greg, let's dive into this symposium and the wealth of information that took place there.
Yeah, I mean, originally we wanted to schedule this at the time that you were actually supposed to be at Symposium, right? So we have been dying, talk about a cliffhanger. We've been dying to find out, what new takeaways there are from Symposium. So what do you got for us, Mike?
Yeah, so what I have is I've got kind of 6 ideas, Greg. I thought I would try to, at least in my own brain, logically group them, and then maybe just see where, between you and me and the other folks that are joining us, where this conversation goes. So the first 2, really in the future, the biggest, most powerful supply chains aren't necessarily going to be the supply chains that win. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. And the one that kind of, I think for me, when I think about the inquiries that I take and the people that I talk to, and I look at our quantitative data, the second one, which I think is one we want to spend a decent amount of time on, the concern for supply chains is that CEOs don't have full confidence that their chief supply chain officers are actually ready to support the digital transformation. I think that's huge. We've always battled as a supply chain to get in front of the C-suite and be part of that C-suite. Right. And the fact that our CEOs may not have full confidence in our ability to get us through that, I think is something that we all need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. How are we going to change that perception?
Yeah, that's big. That's surprising too. I mean, of all the things, there were a lot of terms going through my mind. As you said, the CEO does not have comfort with. I was going that we can handle another supply chain shock, but digital transformation did not come immediately to mind. So why do you think that is, Mike?
Well, I think part of the challenge when I look at our research is there is, in some ways, we're not helping the supply chain, because when I look at our data, we have anywhere from 60 to 75% of organizations telling us there's a disconnect between the business strategy, the digital strategy, and the supply chain strategy. And if I can't align the business and the digital, it's pretty unrealistic to expect my supply chain to be able to align with basically uncertainty. So I think it's that definition of what does digital actually mean, right? We know when you ask, 10 companies, you're going to get 10 different answers, which there isn't anything wrong with that. It's what's wrong is, or what the challenge becomes is if an organization can't articulate it internally. Right. So when we say we are going to be a digital organization, what does that mean? Does that mean we're jumping into the deep end of IoT? Does it mean we're jumping into the deep end of automation? Does it mean it's simply for a retailer, hey, we're going to do more through e-commerce?
Yeah.
None of those are wrong answers, but all of those require different supply chain capabilities. And I think that's where the dilemma sits is what do we want to be when we grow up digitally, and then what do we need from a supply chain?
I could see that being a concern when you put it that way. Where do you start eating the elephant?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Because all of those are options to many entities. If you think about it, with the number of manufacturers that are going direct to consumer, with and the e-commerce transformation that often it requires for them. When you think about how many functions need to move from paper to digital, or from spreadsheets to applications, or manual to automated, as you think about it, I could see why that's probably not nearly as much an indictment of the chief supply chain officer,
right,
as it is more a recognition of the complexity of the business problem. Right.
Exactly. And I think it also, Greg, speaks to that first point, which is just because you have a large supply chain does not guarantee that you're A, going to survive, and B, that you've understood how to bring in resiliency and agility, right? And those I'm sure for everyone that's joining us are probably words that have made it to everyone's supply chain bingo card. And we, frankly, even on at Gartner, are trying to kind of not overuse those words.
Right.
But if you look at organizations that are coming through this disruption, the pandemic, on the other side, in a better situation than when they started, it's because they're resilient and they're agile. And, size in some instances can help you with that, but also size in some ways can really hurt you in terms of your ability to kind of turn the ship and be able to be responsive.
Yeah, agility is difficult on a big ship, right?
Yeah.
So we got a couple of comments from the audience. I'm going to reverse the order here. Anadia says, digital means transformation in process, business model, domain, and culture. And she also mentioned that she started, we're talking about new habits in 2020, started to create content for LinkedIn this year. Never imagined doing it ever before. So congrats, getting out of your comfort zone, Anadia. And Keith says, piggybacks on one of the comments you made, Mike, or does the technology with the supply chain mean using RFID and or blockchain for inventory management?
I think that goes precisely to the dilemma you described, Mike, is there's yet another option, right? There are so many directions that organizations could go. Probably is the manifestation of the CEO's own concern about what is the appropriate direction or appropriate first or next step.
Yeah, I think, Greg, the challenge, and Scott, that here's where the challenge becomes is the organization being able to articulate, and I think most organizations can tell you this is what digital means to us, right? I think we've made a pretty good step in that direction. What we haven't necessarily defined then is how does that change the supply chain capabilities and the supply chain operating model? How does that need to change? And what role do people, process, and technology play in that? So I'll give you, one of our, we've talked about it here in the past, L'Oreal, from our supply chain top 25, that has evolved, what digital means to them is personalized makeup. And how that manifests itself is moving away from, producing in incredible numbers the same shade of red lipstick to now being able to produce potentially thousands of different shades because customer A likes one shade and customer B likes another, right? There's a huge capability and operating model change that needs to happen in order to support that digital strategy. And it's being able to make those connections that I think in some ways is why chief supply chain officers, why they're staying up late at night trying to figure out what are those changes, and then how do I communicate that up to the CEO and those types of folks.
Some mass customization only continues to grow and grow and grow. And Anadia, my apologies, gentlemen. My apologies there. So great to have you. Appreciate keeping comments
small picture. Coming. I get it.
Yes. Hey, but that running joke about Henry Ford when the Model T first came out. All right, do you want black or black in terms of the color of the vehicle? And it's just so amazing. Of course, you're talking lipstick, not automobiles, but just the sheer scale of being able to get what you want, when you want it, what shade you want it, with this option, and how it's so here to stay,
Cindy Lago mentioned it over a year ago, and then again on a recent episode with her, the batch of one, right?
Exactly. Yep.
It's, and the immediate thing that makes me think about is laser or
3D printing.
3D printing, right? Yeah. Imagine you just sit there and watch your lipstick or whatever. In my case, probably more of a whatever they call that foundation.
Blush.
I have 3 daughters. I should know that better. Yeah. Anyway, I think that is one of many incredible complexities. So I get the trepidation there. All right. So go Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it's just my last thought on that, Greg, is you raise a great point with and the previous comment around RFID and blockchain. I think the chief supply chain officers and the supply chain teams, I think, need to be much more pragmatic and targeted around where technology is going to help, right? So find where RFID is going to help you. Find where a use case for blockchain. Embrace technology like 3D printing and understand where and how might that enable the digital journey. So there certainly is and are technology alternatives. I think that the challenge for folks is fitting that technology, finding the right home for it. And not like we've done, with blockchain, which basically said, which is the same conversation we had, oh, by the way, years ago with RFID, it will solve all of our problems. Right. It will solve some problems very, very well. You just need to find what problem it is.
Yeah, that's right. Find the problem first.
Yes.
Don't go around with a hammer thinking everything's a nail, right?
Exactly.
I love that.
Yes.
Hey, a couple quick comments here.
Sure.
Anna Diaz says, that's why data is so important. It helps drive customer experience. Great point there. Michael Kinneman says, we still have too many supply chains that operate in silos, kind of going back to your earliest point, Mike. And for digital supply chains to operate effectively, we must eliminate the silos. And then one final comment here. This really conjures up a visual. If you really think about it, the first customization of colors and shades were done at the local paint store. The challenge is to take that personalization to a larger model that covers national and global supplies. Thanks so much for that, Keith. Yep. And appreciate Great your point. Comment on this week. We're celebrating the founding of the city of Denver. And we referenced that in a This Week in Business History podcast. Thanks for the call out there, Keith. Okay, so Greg, hearing those comments and especially going back to where this started with the lack, all the concern around the lack of alignment and how that hinders digital transformation. And when you think of that proverbial silo that we've heard about for so long, Greg, what comes to mind here?
Well, I mean, now silos used to apply within your organization. Now silos of information or supply chain segment that applies to enterprise operations. I mean, we have to think of the supply chain as global. There are no boundaries anymore, not corporate boundaries, not country boundaries, maybe not even planetary boundaries. But I mean, if you think about the supply chain in that perspective, then that adds yet another level of complexity. And now, if we expect to be able to be agile, right, and resilient, those are two words we've been saying since March 13th at 3 p.m. when the order came down, but at least in Georgia. But if you expect to be agile and resilient, then you have to be enabled to change not just your internal operations, but your external operations, right? You have to be able to switch from let's say you accomplish nearshoring. You have to be able to switch from your nearshoring to your offshoring initiative, or to an inshoring initiative, or to a whatever other shoring initiative you might have, because now if you've got a China plus one or X country or vendor plus one strategy, you still need agility to be able to switch production to that facility, or sourcing to that facility, right? So, data, process, people, training, of course, right? Exception handling. I mean, there are all sorts of aspects of that. It sounds really overwhelming when you talk about it like that. All of these things that have been said here in the comments, all highly intellectual and difficult to even type, but 10 times as difficult to implement.
Yeah, great point. And of course, it's our well-informed and expert community that always bring it.
We know what to do.
Yeah. Well, so Mike,
the difficulty comes in how to get it done.
Yes. Well, so let me ask you a follow-up question, Mike. Are there any, especially when we talk about the larger organizations that Greg's kind of alluded to, all on our planet, though, for now, for the sake of the question.
Fine.
What, when you think of, clearly that's a concern in the CEO office, right? And everything rolls up there. When you think about the companies that have really done a great job creating that alignment, not eliminating the silos, but really breaking them down for the most part, so that they're really going down the path practically and successfully down towards achieving digital transformation. Any observations there in terms of who's getting that facilitation and alignment strategy right?
Yeah, I think it comes down to really two things. When I look at, I'd probably bring us back to our supply chain top 25 companies, right? They're the ones that are probably closest to having things around that alignment and so on. And one of the things they share is, and to the earlier comment around how do you break down silos, part of the way you break them down is to bring all the silos into one area, like the supply chain. So if I look at top 25 companies and our masters, they all have a broader definition of the supply chain. Their supply chain is not defined as distribution centers and trucks. You think of it at more like the traditional SCORE model: plan, source, make, deliver, customer service. All of those elements are within the supply chain, run by, let's say, a chief supply chain officer. So now you have those individual silos are now all within the same team. It becomes much easier to facilitate those cross-silo, those cross-functional discussions. The other element they have, though, is in order to ensure everyone is going in the same direction, you need a balanced end-to-end set of metrics, right? We need metrics that highlight for us trade-off decisions. They highlight for us, right, here's the trade-off decision you're making. Are you making that consciously? We have, and it will sound harsh, so I apologize. We have a metrics maturity model. Stage 1 is unconsciously incompetent. Doesn't get much worse than that.
Right.
And that's a case where you've got all these functional metrics running around the organization, and everyone is optimizing their own functional metric and, doing high fives or, virtual high fives. Because their piece of the business is running great. Doesn't matter that they've hosed the whole rest of the business, right? So that broader definition of the supply chain in terms of the area of its responsibility, and this idea of end-to-end metrics that facilitates conscious trade-off decisions, I think is important. And maybe the last maybe subplot to that is a general understanding that we need optimization to happen, and that in optimization, quite frankly, not everyone gets what they want. The organization gets what it wants and needs, but I might have to incur some more cost in the DCs in order to create a better experience, let's say, in the stores. So those would be kind of the maybe 2A things I see, Scott, in organizations as they're looking to work through that.
Outstanding. All right. So Greg, there's so much here, and I know we've got to take full use of Mike's time while he's here with us.
Yeah.
Where do we want to go next? We want to pick what else stood out to him?
Yeah, let's get down the list, right? Yeah. I think we only got to 2, right? We got a few more coming, so let's hear it, man.
So maybe in the interest of time, let me jump to kind of what I think is the next big one. And it does,
sure.
And again, we don't rehearse any of this, but it does feed pretty naturally off the whole resiliency and agility discussion. Was really 2 points. Reverse logistics is becoming more common in other industries beyond just industrial. And secondly, and this I really think speaks to your earlier comment, Greg, it will no longer be acceptable to create waste in a future supply chain. And I know that inherently we've never consciously decided to create waste in the supply chain, but it is now even more important that we recognize where waste is, whether that's, trailer space, miles, even things broader than that. Waste in how we design products, waste in terms of what happens to products at end of life.
Right.
That whole idea around waste and reverse logistics, and I'll certainly show my bias here. Reverse logistics is still a huge problem for retail. We still haven't sorted it out, frankly, and until we do, particularly with the growth of e-commerce, we're going to continue to struggle with that as a capability.
Yeah.
So you've got some fans of the phrase you used a second ago, unconsciously incompetent. Awesome.
It's a bit harsh.
Yes. Tim says, we say promoted to a level of incompetence. So
yes, the
Yes,
Peter
the
principle.
Peter principle, exactly.
yeah, Tim, great to have you here, and we need to talk more healthcare supply chain really soon. Keith says Mike is hearkening to Dale Carnegie training, unconsciously incompetent. The next steps are consciously incompetent, consciously competent, and then unconsciously competent. Try to say that 10 times fast.
Well, it's easier to type than it is to say, that's for sure.
Right.
So much good stuff here.
If you want a good analogy of that, think about your driving, where you go from can't start the car to forgetting you shifted through second and third gear to get to fourth, right? That is unconsciously competent, right?
All right. We should be asking as much fun as we're having, and so many great practical insights. Greg, we should be asking about what's next on the radar for Mike, right?
Yeah. I mean, now that, that we've addressed, I think a very important topic, which is reverse logistics. I wonder if that isn't, maybe not in your area so much, but I know that Tom Enright addresses this frequently. Yep. Is that something that you all have or intend to put a greater spotlight on based on the findings from Symposium?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, and I think I mean, as one of our analysts pointed out, right, this isn't just an industrial problem, right, an industrial sector problem. I mean, it's a problem for everybody. I think if you were to ask consumer products companies, right, and their interactions and working with retailers, they've got issues with reverse logistics. Healthcare, life sciences companies, I'm sure, do as well. So it really is a topic that we need to figure out as a supply chain. I think the first step is actually monetizing the damage that poor reverse logistics is doing. Whether that's in a retail environment where I have returns that are fully sellable that I can't get back into my inventory ecosystem, right? There's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the physical transportation costs of moving product that is either returned or unsellable, moving that someplace else to be processed. The impact it has when I bring that stuff, say, into a traditional distribution center, the inefficiency that causes as people are trying to work through, reverse logistics stuff, plus stuff that actually just came in to be shipped out. So there's just a ton of work, I think, that could be done around, what's the cost of inefficient reverse logistics? That might be the impetus that gets people's attention when they actually see how much money are we, again, it gets back to that waste discussion, right? How much money are we wasting because our reverse logistics processes aren't very good?
Yeah, and to date, in a lot of industries, you're able to put the waste onto someone else's balance sheet.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And when it starts to hit your own balance sheet, that's when you'll do something about it.
So that's a great point, Greg. You're exactly right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hey, one quick
that again, because I didn't hear that very well.
One quick comment, little teaser.
Yeah.
We look forward to reinvigorating our reverse logistics series in 2021.
Nice.
Not only because we love our partners there, but because more folks need to understand all what's taking place in that aspect of global supply chain. So, little teaser, more details to come.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, where are we headed next?
Yeah. Any other events coming up for Gartner? I know you have a kind of interesting event about next year, at least as of now. But
yes. So we just announced that we're doing our symposium events live next year. At least that's the plan. We're doing Barcelona on September 20th through the 22nd, and we're doing, Orlando, October 25th through the 27th. So, right now we're putting a stake in the ground and saying we're going to be live with those events. I mean, this year it was mind-boggling, Greg, pulling all this virtual stuff together as we've talked about. But we had for both Barcelona and for Orlando, we had nearly 3,000 people registered virtually, and close to 2,000 people popped in to multiple different sessions over the course of the 3 days. So still was a lot of excitement. It wasn't, frankly, the experience that we had all hoped for, right? We love doing these things in person, just like you guys like doing live events in person. Mm-hmm. But we are optimistic that we'll be able to have live events in September and October, and we're really excited about that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's impressive. As soon as you said Barcelona, I started checking my calendar. So
unfortunately, Greg, it is still on planet Earth. I'll let you know when we move Sim to the moon or someplace else.
Well, I could probably go out of the atmosphere and back in by Barcelona, I would think.
You probably could.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I think
yes.
we all look forward to being together in any measure. And I think by that time, right, it looks like with both the vaccines and some reasonable mitigation efforts that we should be able to get there, right?
We're all hoping. I know we are on the Gartner side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're gonna break through. We're gonna break through. So look.
On the other hand, if I have to die anywhere, Barcelona would be just as good a place as any.
Oh, we got all non-morbid observations here, Greg.
I'm only talking about me.
Well, Mike, we never have enough time when you stop in, which is one of the reasons why I'm so glad we have a monthly conversation with you. We've heard so much about these conversations and what you bring to the table that we're really grateful to have you here. Let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and the Gartner team.
So Mike.Griswold, Gartner.com. I have a New Year's resolution to drag myself into the 21st century, at least to do more on LinkedIn. That's about all I'll commit to right now. I'll tell you, it's just a quick side note. The worst thing that happened is I now own the girls basketball program Twitter account. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, exactly. So anyone that's got Twitter suggestions, please send them my way, because I am consciously incompetent when it comes to Twitter.
Take pictures of cats in like the team uniform and post them. That's all you need to do on Twitter.
All right.
Especially if they have really entertaining names, those cats there, Mike. I'll save that for another show.
Okay.
But Mike, great to have you back.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Looking forward already to December as we move into getting closer and closer to 2021, and we can all celebrate that. But thanks so much for your time. Mike Griswold, Vice President, Analyst with Gartner. Hope you and your family have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. You too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much,
Mike. Good seeing you.
All right. So, Greg, a lot of good stuff there.
That went by so fast.
Yes. Well, Mike is one of the, I won't call it a short list because it seems like more and more folks, the list is getting longer. You can pose anything to Mike and he's going to give you a well thought out, been there, done that, data driven research answer and informed, educated answer on what you pose to him. And that really, we've had countless responses along those lines. I'm jealous. I wish I could take a page out of the Mike Griswold book and approach conversations like he can, huh?
Well, how about what he takes away from the Masters? Not just that he watched the whole thing, but he takes away, a life lesson from a 10 on number 12, which isn't uncommon at the Masters, by the way, just uncommon for Tiger Woods.
That's right. And not uncommon for golf either. There's so much, so many life lessons to be found, especially if you play the game. It's one of life's most humbling sports and experiences for sure.
Mike, first of all, was a fantastic professional in industry, and now he spends his time contemplating what can make the industry better, particularly from a retail and a distribution and a manufacturing fulfillment, replenishment, order optimization standpoint. And he's literally got his finger on the pulse of supply chain.
Agreed. All right. So I want to acknowledge some of the comments we had in the stream, and also
we should have acknowledged Tim's about Mike's pictures before we let Mike go.
Well, I've got a different challenge I want to pose to Tim. So Tim Ingram, if you're still here, stick around for just a couple minutes because I've got a challenge for you. But for starters, I want to recognize a few of these other comments. Anadia, of course, adapting the lean to eliminate the muda. We need a lot of the waste taken out of global supply chain. Waste. Japanese word for waste.
Oh, okay.
Aaron Freed says, I'm reminded of the Prussian officer model, because he corrected in a future message. 4 types: lazy and stupid, hardworking and stupid, lazy and smart, and hardworking and smart. 4 quadrants. You keep all but the hardworking and stupid people because they're going to muck it all up.
I believe that's what the conscious and unconscious incompetence was adapted from. Is that model? I think if I've read the books or a review of the book, they actually attribute it to that.
Yes,
I think you're
right. And I always trust the European, in particular, the Russian expert there. So, yeah, well, small difference, but still, still geographically.
German,
here we go.
German
directionally.
You're right.
Nick Roomer got his last name right that time, is also a fan of Tequila Sunrise. Nick, great to have you here as part of today's live stream. Keith says, Aaron, love the model, the Prussian officer model we just talked about. I heard of that before, but forgot about it. Thanks for the reminder. I tell you, Aaron is great at that. Let's see here. All right, so Tim, I'm going to throw a challenge out. So Tim Ingram is with us, and if I'm not mistaken, I could have this wrong. If I have it wrong, the challenge will remain nonetheless. So Tim is in healthcare supply chain, if I've got that right, and if he's not, at least he's passionate about healthcare supply chain. So Tim, I've got a challenge for you. If you're up to the task, and if you have interest, I'd love for you to lead the assembly of a diverse, from different walks of life panel of healthcare practitioners that will be interested in sharing what, kind of the lay of the land right now from a healthcare supply chain standpoint, given all that's going on and where we're headed. And for that matter, having been a part of some continuous improvement programming at some of the larger hospital systems in my career. Fascinating. It's so fascinating, both the parallel challenges they're solving and the very unique elements of that world. So Tim, if you're interested, we'd love to tap and leverage your leadership to assembling, again, a diverse panel that can share that expertise with our audience. So Greg, do you think he's going to take us up on the challenge?
I bet he will. And I'm going to make a suggestion for somebody you ought to talk to, and that is Paul Rose, who's the Chief Supply Chain Officer at Henry Schein. If we consider Italian diverse, then he counts. But in any case, Henry Schein is one of the distributors that traditionally distributes the flu vaccine. So even though the fulfillment for the COVID vaccine is being conducted directly by the manufacturer, Paul can speak very directly to the complexities of the distribution of a vaccine like that.
Love it. Let's do both. Maybe we have a feature on Paul, and maybe we put together a panel of folks that are doing different things across healthcare supply chain. So, but Tim would welcome that and that discussion. T Squared, going back to reverse logistics, says reverse logistics needs to be embraced just on asset recapturing. I think that's certainly a big part. Greg, as we know,
I think Tyson Steffens would agree with that. Pallets.
I think you would.
That's one of the most difficult to recapture assets.
Well, that there lies in one of the greatest challenges of where we stand from a consumer expectations moment in history, with the practical element of, okay, we'll take it back, we'll give you credit, but now what do we do with it? And how do we put it back cleanly, safely, and make the new consumers that may purchase it happy as well? I mean, it's quite a fascinating dilemma that we have given the Amazon world we live in right now,
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, I got to tell you, the biggest commentary whenever a package comes to the house now is, why did they put it in a box that big or that much stuff in it? Or why is there a box within a box within a box? Right.
Agreed. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, Greg, your experience, but it seems like the e-commerce providers have gotten better and better in the last, picking a time frame here, I'll call it the last 8 months, right? With at least what we're getting. It seems like the exceptions of getting a small little Rubik's Cube in a package the size of something, a big old 50-pound bag of dog food will come in. It seems like I'm seeing that less and less, which is a great thing. Are you seeing something similar along those lines?
Anecdotally, I could say possibly. I'd have to think about it. I'm thinking about what we had delivered this week. Now there's so many things that can be delivered in bags. that are. And the benefit of a protective bag is that it's got those little bubbles you can pop for like the next 4 hours, and that's nice as well.
Agreed. We thought Jenny Froome may pop in, and she's doing just that to say hello again, folks. 2020 SAPICS virtual conference right around the corner next week, open to any and all, and they've got some great programming. So Jenny, hope this finds you well, and I look forward to that next week. All right, so Greg, so much good stuff here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure folks know, hey, again, we're here to serve as the voice of supply chain and to serve the voice of supply chain. And that's all the folks in the audience around the world that keep industry moving forward, right? And think about all the different elements, all the different nodes of global supply chain. So if you enjoyed today's episode, you can learn more at supplychainnow.com. That's also, it's a great clearinghouse, and we're going to be rolling out a new website really, really soon. But that'll be the great clearinghouse for all the different shows that we've referenced here earlier. Of course, Tequila Sunrise, This Week in Business History, the Reverse Logistics monthly series, which is going to be reinvigorated soon enough.
Right. Okay,
Tech
good.
Talk, you name it. So much good stuff. But you can find it there, or you can find any of those shows on their own channels. And you can search for that.
Not kidding. Listen to the latest This Week in Business History about Rose Knox and Knox Gelatin and all of the just general business disruption that Rose employed in, was it 1908?
1908. Took the reins.
1908.
Yep.
Right. A woman took over a company in the United States, imparted a 5-day work week, both unheard of at the time, right? 2 weeks of vacation, also not allowed by the robber barons of the time.
Yep.
And there was so much more. I mean, it's just
here's the other thing.
Story.
So I did I can never do videos right. I tried to do a promo yesterday.
That was really good.
Well, I was so stopped in my tracks with how gorgeous it was outside. And that's where, of course, all the great lighting was. But I wanted to call attention to the episode because it's one of those that you get inspired by. Yeah. And, one of the things as I put that promo out there, it dawned on me that in 1908, I think I've got this right, and I'm sure one of our audience members will fact check me. I think there was only between territory, some states were territories at the time. There's only 3 or 4 states or territories where women could even vote in 1908, much less take the reins and call the shots and defy all the folks that told Rose Knox not to do that. So that's one of those episodes that really is uplifting, inspires you, and challenges you to do more and more and more. So good stuff there. All right, so Greg, as we are starting to wrap here, enjoyed our conversation with Mike Griswold as always. Everyone can find us at supplychainnow.com. We want to challenge our audience, right? As always, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. But Greg, we got a little
in on me there.
I did because we've got a new timing device on the back end here, and this is the first time we're using it as we kind of finish on a high note and not a cold note. So to all of our audience, hey, y'all, if we don't talk to you before next week, and at least if you're here in the States with Thanksgiving upon us, we've got so much, even in a year like this, we've got so much to be grateful for. Sometimes if you're like me, you got to stop and call timeout and just kind of level set, because there's no shortage of challenges, but man, we've got so much to be thankful for. So I hope you and your families have a wonderful Thanksgiving wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with. And on behalf of Greg White and Scott Luton, the whole team here, we'll see you next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.